How are you today? I'm Richard Rogers of the Unity of Prescott, and we are so glad that you're with us today. Today, we're going to focus on reconciliation. With all that's going on in the world today, I wanted to speak into that because I really believe that this is an incredible time where we need to be focused on healing not only our own relationships, but our country as well. And so today, we're going to focus on reconciliation and what are the spiritual principles that we can use in any situation to really reconcile, to create greater love, to create greater connectedness with the people that we love the most. And how do we do it as a nation? So that's where we're going today. Kirsten Plambeck is going to be doing the music today. She's fabulous. So I want you to just take a deep breath. I want you to get ready for this wonderful service and really experience the full presence and power of God in your life.
When my hands were empty, when my hope was gone, I couldn't help but wonder, what had I done wrong? But even though my heart was broken, there was no need to despair, 'cause a vessel must be open to put something better there. Into my empty hands, gently you poured new life for me. Yours is a perfect plan. The ups and the downs were meant to be. Now I understand you needed my empty hands. So forgive me when I doubted or consider giving up. I know I'll never go without it. Your deep and abiding love, oh love, into my empty hands, gently you pour new life for me. Yours is a perfect plan. The ups and the downs were meant to be. Now I understand you needed my empty hands. Oh, into my empty hands, gently you pour new life for me. Yours is a perfect plan. The ups and the downs were meant to be. Now I understand you needed my empty hands. Oh, my empty hands.
All right, let's move into our time of meditation. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to feel the presence and power of God. That this week the lesson is all about reconciliation. About reconciling with the people that we love the most. and allowing ourselves to overcome the bumps and the bruises from life. And that we know that love is the power that restores all things. So take a deep breath, and I want you to feel the power of love. The love restores every relationship. Love makes all things new. And if there's a person in your life that there's been a situation or a need or a challenge or a way that you've bumped into them, I want you today just to send them love, to wish them well, to see the overflowing goodness of God pouring into their life, that they feel profoundly loved. Pure love heals and blesses every relationship. Pure love restores every situation to its highest level. So we open our mind, we open our heart, we open our soul. That love heals. And we see this happening not only in our own life, but we see this happening throughout our country. That love is restoring our nation. That love is taking us to higher ground. That love makes all things right again. That the love of God is greater than anything that we know. That the love of God is transforming every situation. Holy, holy, holy love. God love. Divine love. Spiritual love. Heals every situation. Thank you, God, for the love that makes all things new. The love that is greater than any need. The love that blesses us now. And so it is. Amen.
Between every sunrise and sunset, we can live our lives so we have no regrets. We can be right or be kind. We can lift each other up and let our big light shine. So lay it down, brother, lay it down. Lay down pride and prejudice so only love can be found. Lay it down, brother, lay it down. What you put into the universe will come back around. Hey, hey. I pray to be tongue-tied in a battle of words. Let my heart be the sound that must be heard. If I speak love, there's no room for hate. If I speak of my blessings, there's no room for debate. So lay it down, brother, lay it down. Lay down pride and prejudice so only love can be found. Lay it down, brother, lay it down. What you put into the universe will come back around. So here we are, just another day, another chance for change. If only we could see God in us, then His love would not feel strange. Oh, so lay it down, brother, lay
Have you ever been in a heated discussion with somebody you love? I mean, not just a discussing ideas, but one of those times where feelings have gotten hurt when we bump. And you know, when I love that idea of that, you know, in my relationships with my family, we call it bumping. And sometimes with family members, even though you just love and adore them, you bump. You bump into each other. You hurt each other's feelings. You say something you wish you hadn't, or you forget to do something you wanted to do, or, you know, we just bump. In the human condition, we bump from time to time. And one of the things that happens when we bump is there's feelings attached to them. And in those feelings, we feel like sometimes that people, you know, aren't really listening to us, or they don't really care about us, or they're not really respecting us. And then we get into these positions where we're not always sure how to build a bridge. And that's what reconciliation is all about. Reconciliation is our ability to build bridges so that we can reconnect to the people that are the most important to us. Because I guarantee, no matter how much you love somebody, from time to time, you are going to bump. There is going to be moments in every relationship where we don't say the right thing, we don't do the right thing, we don't act in the way that we want to act, and we bump. At least that's, at my level of life, I bump. And it doesn't matter how much I love you, sometimes words come out or things happen. But it's so important to me and for us that we have a way of building bridges after a bump to reconnect. And I believe that it's really spiritual. You know, over and over again, Jesus taught us that we were called to forgive. Well, sometimes forgiveness is hard. Like when somebody bumps into us, when they hurt our feelings, or when they do something that's less than becoming, sometimes it's hard to forgive. And as that we can actually help one another forgive each other. Like if I do something that bumps you, if I say something or do something that just rubs you the wrong way, I'd like to know about that, because I'd like to really reconcile with that. I want to move beyond that. I want to help you forgive. I want to help you let go so that we get to restore a relationship. And I think that that's happening over and over again. You know, over the last several weeks, we have watched hundreds of thousands of protesters protest in our country about the death of George Floyd. And we've seen people, you know, and sometimes it's gone out of hand and it's become rioting. But we've seen peaceful protesting in our country about the racism that people have experienced. And what do we do as a nation to create reconciliation? How do we move to create a world that works for all of us? You know, that was Martin Luther King's vision for our world, for our country, is that we could create the beloved community. And the beloved community wasn't some kind of, you know, utopian vision of possibilities. The beloved community was a way that we could create a world that worked for everyone. And it wasn't in his vision that there wouldn't be any conflict, but the way that we would walk through that conflict would actually be different, that we could actually, you know, be in a world where we could work together to create the highest level of good. You know, the opening line to our Constitution says, in order to form a more perfect union. And those words always just resonate so deeply in my soul that there is this human desire. There's this national desire, I believe, for us to always be about creating a more perfect union, creating a world that works for all. And sometimes when we hear people protesting, or when we don't understand what they're fighting for or what they want, we kind of dismiss them and think, well, that doesn't really apply to me or to my family. But today, what I want us to really open a space for is, how do we stand in reconciliation? How do we create a world that works for all? And I believe in reconciliation, there's really two aspects of it. You know, the first aspect of reconciliation is that we really are willing to acknowledge the hurt, acknowledge the situation. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than to have a situation where somebody bumps into you or somebody does something, and then they pretend like it never happened. Right? I don't know if you've ever had that experience in your family or in your world where you get bumped, you get your feelings hurt, and then the person pretends like it never happened. And so it almost feels like a double bump at that point. That not only did you have the original hurt or the original wounding, but then when they won't acknowledge it, when there's nothing said, when there's nothing done about it, then it feels like a double bump. And what I want you to see is that for most of us, it's so helpful in our healing when somebody will acknowledge they bumped into us. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. And when we actually acknowledge the bump, it actually helps people forgive us. But when we bump into somebody and then said, I don't know what you're talking about, or that never happened, or, it's like, whoa. It actually makes it more difficult. So the first aspect of reconciliation over and over again is that you have to it's so helpful to acknowledge the bump. And sometimes, our ego gets in that place where we feel so bad about bumping somebody that it's difficult for us even to acknowledge that we did it. But when we really take a step back and when we let love lead us, then we can actually say, I bumped into you. I said something or I did something, and I want to acknowledge that I did it, and I'm so sorry that I did it. So the first step in reconciliation is always that ability to acknowledge it and to actually be bigger than the hurt, to be bigger than the pain, to acknowledge our behavior, to acknowledge the situation. Sometimes I remember saying to a woman who had been through a very painful, abusive situation, I said to her one day in a session at the church, I said, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And she looked at me, and these big tears started coming down her face. And she said, nobody ever said they were sorry. And just hearing another human being say that they were sorry meant the world to her, because at that moment, she felt like somebody actually shared the pain that she went through. That really, if we're going to reconcile with each other, we have to be willing to say, I'm sorry for what happened. Even if we weren't directly involved in it. Like, I'm sorry. And the other aspect of reconciliation is the requirement of transformation. If you say you're sorry, but you keep doing the same behavior over and over and over again, it's really hard for the people to believe that you're actually sorry. It's hard to believe that there's really a desire for reconciliation if you keep doing the same behavior over and over and over again. And it's like, so reconciliation really requires these two aspects, an acknowledgement and a transformation. And when you look at it again from our Constitution, in order to form a more perfect union, and I love that idea, because I love that idea in every relationship, in every family, this idea, in order to form a more perfect family, a more perfect relationship, a more perfect community, a more perfect nation, there's this opportunity to acknowledge the bumps, the hurt feelings, the disappointments, the place where we missed the mark, the place where we've fallen down and didn't act at the level. And then there's this hope for transformation. That even though I dropped the ball here, I am willing to be transformed. I'm willing to learn from that mistake. I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to be a better, greater example of myself. That this acknowledgement and this transformation is the way that we build healthy, strong families, communities, nations, churches, by acknowledging that we're all going to fall short. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to say things or do things, and then later we regret. And we're all going to be, at some point, have to acknowledge our humanness, our humanity, our failings, our shortcomings. But there's also this need for transformation, that we actually learn from our mistakes, that we become greater and greater examples of the Christ presence within us. And for me, one of the greatest opportunities right now is the process that is taught through Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is the Hawaiian ancient process of reconciliation. And in Ho'oponopono, the process is really about how do we bring reconciliation. Because when you live on an island, reconciliation is really important because you can only go so far to get away from people. You know, there's only so far you can get away. So the idea of reconciliation is actually a requirement if you live on an island because you can't be mad at everybody, right? You can't have an upset with the whole island. And so Ho'oponopono was the way of really moving back into reconciliation. So I'm going to go to the screen now. I'm going to go to the board. So first I'm going to spell it. So if you're not familiar with it, it's Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono. That's an N. Okay? Ho'oponopono. Now, the way that we practice Ho'oponopono today is kind of a simplified version of the ancient Ho'oponopono. The ancient Ho'oponopono, what would happen if there was an upset or if there was a disruption in the community, then somebody would call a Ho'oponopono. The people that were directly affected would actually have to be together until it was resolved. So they would eat together, they would sleep in the same area, they would actually live together. And in that process, everyone that was in any way affected by that situation could share how it felt to be them. And it could go on for days. And the greater community would be there to bring food, to bring whatever was needed, so that the people that were involved in going through the process of Ho'oponopono could stay in the process until everyone was resolved. And in fact, in the ancient Hawaiian, the only way you could be excommunicated or kicked off an island was if you were not willing to participate in the Ho'oponopono, because they knew that if you engaged in the process, that you could get to reconciliation. But if you refused to be in the process, then there was no hope for ever moving into reconciliation. So the way that we practice Ho'oponopono today, the first one is, I'm sorry. And the first step, even if we never say it to the person directly, even if this is just a prayer process you're using in your life, the first step is to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your pain. I'm sorry that you had to go through this. I'm sorry that this was a difficult situation. I'm sorry. And to feel an acknowledgement that from human being to human being, from that we can actually acknowledge one another's pain. And I'm sorry it was difficult for you. I'm sorry. Then the next line is, please forgive me. Now, in the ancient Hawaii process of Ho'oponopono, the please forgive me was a much bigger line, because it wasn't just what you did, it was also anything that you did consciously or unconsciously. It was anything that your ancestors did. So it was a much bigger thing. And when we see people, protesting against racism, protesting against police brutality, what I want you to see in the ancient Ho'oponopono, it would be like, forgive any part of me that helped create this situation. Forgive anything that my ancestors, my people have done to create this situation. And it was a much bigger process that sometimes when we just want to do a flyby, I'm sorry, please forgive me, what I want you to see is that what this really invites us into a real deep look at our soul and what we need to do to seek forgiveness. What have I done? How have I in any way supported or created this situation? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Right? That this is the acknowledgement phrase. And if you have someone in your life, or if you want to do this for the nation right now, I want you to spend some time in that activity. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the pain that racism has caused in our country for generations, for hundreds of years. I'm sorry. Please forgive anything that I've done or my ancestors have done that has created this situation that has caused you pain today. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And please forgive any part that I've played consciously or unconsciously in creating this situation. And then the next line comes into the transformation. And the next line is, I love you. Right? That in this process of transformation, when we move from the pain, we actually move into a statement of that individual's importance and value in our life. I love you. It's an acknowledgement that the activity of God is at work in that situation. I love you. And then the final line is, thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being in my world. Thank you for blessing me. Thank you for the gifts that you bring my world. Thank you. And when we say thank you, we're really acknowledging the value of every person in our world today. See, I believe these simple steps of I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you are transformative. Like that we could all spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day doing this inner work so that we can build a more perfect nation, that we can build a world that works for all of us, that as we acknowledge the racism, the hardness of the past, the disappointments and the frustrations of the past, we can actually move into a higher level of transformation. And I believe that right now, the world is asking us to move to a higher level of possibilities. And I want us all to be doing our spiritual work, our inner work, to really allow us to move forward and to use this time for greater good. Now, I don't know what your inner work is, but I know what mine is. And during this time, I think all of us need to go into the quietness of our soul and tell ourselves the truth. That as we go through this process, we can really look at how, if any, we have helped create a world where that it's not working for everyone. So let's move into our time of meditation, if you would, right now with me. And I want to just close with this time of meditation as we go through the steps of Ho'oponopono. And I want you to begin by saying to everyone that's been hurt through racism for the last hundreds of years, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every way that racism has made your life more difficult, more painful, harder than it ever needed to be. I'm sorry for the treatment, the disrespect. I'm sorry for the ways that you didn't feel valued and respected and cherished. I'm sorry. Please forgive anything in me that has helped create racism in our world. And anything that my ancestors, anything that my people have done for generations that have helped create racism. Please forgive us. Please forgive us for anything that we have ever done that has created a world that doesn't work for you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And the third step in Ho'oponopono is I love you. I love you as a child of God. I love you that you're created in the image and likeness of God just like I am. That we are all God's children. We are all one. We are all one human family. I love you. And I thank you for being in my life. I thank you for being in my world. I thank you for the blessings that you bring to my life. I thank you for all the ways that you are making our world greater and richer and deeper and more wonderful. I thank you. And today we go through this process of reconciliation to acknowledge that we may be transformed. So in the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. This is a time of giving of our gifts and tithes, and I invite you to hold them in your hand as we bless them together. Our love offering blessing is divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I give and all that I receive. Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I give and all that I receive. God, we give thanks for every gift and every giver. We give thanks for the abundance that fills our lives. We give thanks that you are our source and that you are an infinite source of good and that you are within us all, expressing through each and every one of us as greater and greater levels of good. So in all things we look to God, in all things we give thanks. And so it is. All right, friends, I know that this is a tough time, whether it's whatever you're going through, and know that we are here to support you in living your best life. I want to thank you all for your generous support of our ministry during this time. We look forward to having you back in the room. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but trust me, I want you back in this room as much as you want to be back in this room. But we are going to get through this time. We're going to be better for it. We're going to create a greater world because of it. And I know that as we go through this inner process over and over again, we are transforming what was into what could be. God bless you, friend. Have a great week.